Government turns down Li Shaoqi's farmland donation offer. Egypt's president vows to stay the course. And Bolivian president's plane diverted amid Snowden suspicions.
Good evening. The government has rejected an offer by property magnate Li Shaoqi to donate land in the new territories aimed at building homes for young buyers. The development secretary says landowners should approach non-profit organizations such as the Housing Society instead. Henderson Land Chairman Li Shaoqi offered to donate a number of plots of agricultural land in the new territories to the government. The idea was to build 10,000 flats there of about 300 square feet each. The sales would target young buyers and each unit would go for about $1 million. There would be no down payment and the average mortgage would work out at about $5,000 a month. But there was one condition, a land premium exemption for the developer in changing the land use. After mulling over the idea, the government rejected the offer.
In such circumstances, we think that it would be best for these interested donors to approach non-profit organizations to explore the possibility of donating lands to these NGOs for them to take forward these projects to realize their ideals.
Chan suggested that the land donation offer can be made to the Housing Society. Chief Executive Officer of the Housing Society, Wang said they have not been approached by any developers, but the government did suggest the idea to them 6 months ago. Wang said the Housing Society could be more flexible than the government for such an offer, but the land premium issue still has to be dealt with. Usually when the Housing Society gets land for subsidized housing, it still has to pay 50% of the premium. Architecture, surveying and planning sector legislator Tony Tse said the government is refusing the offer to avoid accusations that it's giving benefits to a developer, as the project would help boost the value of other farmland in the area. Tse said he doesn't believe the refusal will have much impact on housing supply because the total area offered isn't that big.
The Stamp Duty Victims Alliance claims government measures to cool down the property market are harming small property owners and the middle class. They want the government to relax the measures and will be taking to the streets this weekend to express their demands. Joel De Silva has more.
Property agents, small owners and middle-class residents. They call themselves the Stamp Duty Victims Alliance and claim that the government's stamp duty hikes to curb speculation in the property market are harming them. One of the members, Centerline founder Xi Wing-ting, says the number of property transactions since the new measures kicked in has dropped 70%, hurting not only the industry itself but also other related sectors. He also says the new measures are unfair towards small owners.
And to the small owner, they are more severely affected by this measure because before these measures, they can sell their property to a lot of different kinds of people. This is their property right to choose the purchaser to sell their property at the price they accepted.
Ultimately, she says the measures are affecting the property rights of small owners because they didn't expect the government to interfere with the market at the time they purchased their units. And he also warns that the government's intervention in the market is harming the city's international standing.
Providing road tax allowance, providing free land for them to build the headquarters, but they choose Hong Kong. That is what they got when they choose Hong Kong. So a lot of foreign business people no longer think Hong Kong welcome them. So this is not good to the economy of Hong Kong.
This coming Friday, the Stamp Duty Victims Alliance will be publishing their list of demands in local newspapers. And that's not all. The Stamp Duty Victims Alliance will be taking to the streets this coming Sunday. They'll be marching from Victoria Park here to the central government offices to express their demands. João da Silva, TVB News.
Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi remains defiant in the face of demands from millions of protesters that he step down. Morsi has vowed to protect his constitutional legitimacy. That's despite an army deadline for him to arrive at a political solution in conjunction with the opposition, which is due to expire at 11 o'clock this evening, Hong Kong time. Alan Buckner reports.
Speaking on a midnight national television address, Morsi refused to work with his opponents or share power. 1 year into his first term as Egypt's first democratically elected president, he demanded that the armed forces withdraw their ultimatum. He warned that any deviation from the democratic order would lead Egypt down a dangerous path. The broadcast enraged Morsi's opponents, who amassed in Cairo's Tahrir Square. Clashes between pro- and anti-Morsi factions saw at least 24 people killed in Cairo. Opponents of Morsi accuse him of ignoring their concerns and trying to impose Islamist values on the country.
The constitution will be reviewed.
Opposition leaders, meanwhile, held a news conference, once again demanding that Morsi resign.
The Egyptians are going out in the streets right now because of a regime that is being dictatorial, but it's a failure. This is one thing. And the other thing, that they want to steal the identity of Egyptians, saying that Egypt is Islamist, while the Egyptians are claiming by all means today in all the streets of Egypt that they are not neither Islamists nor fanatics.
Once the 48-hour deadline passes later today, the military is expected to suspend the constitution, disband parliament, and install a new leadership. Alan Buckner, TVB News.
A plane carrying Bolivian President Evo Morales back home from Russia was forced to land in Austria yesterday. Suspicious that intelligence whistleblower Edward Snowden was being snuck out of Russia on board his plane had France and Portugal both refusing to let it cross their airspace. The move has triggered outrage among Bolivians, who are now calling the incident a serious violation of the Vienna Convention. Russian President Vladimir Putin held back-to-back meetings yesterday with the presidents of Venezuela and Bolivia. Knowing Nicolas Maduro and Evo Morales were both open to granting Edward Snowden asylum was cause for reasonable suspicion they might try to help Snowden, who's still holed up in a transit area of a Moscow airport. U.S. President Barack Obama made it clear to a number of countries that granting Snowden asylum would carry costs. So to make doubly sure Snowden wasn't being hidden on board, President Morales' plane was denied access to French and Portuguese airspace and forced to land in Austria. Morales was seen agreeing to a voluntary inspection. Once his presidential plane was thoroughly searched, an Austrian foreign ministry official confirmed Snowden was nowhere in sight. The news sent Bolivia's vice president in a fit of outrage, saying President Morales was kidnapped by imperialism. Alvaro Garcia Linera also pointed out that obstructing any president's plane is a violation of the Vienna Convention. Bolivia's foreign minister was equally furious. He accused France and Portugal of putting Morales' life at risk. News that their president's plane was denied airspace led Bolivians to converge on the French embassy in La Paz. Bolivia's House of Representatives even adopted a resolution calling for Portugal and France to explain their actions. Over in Ecuador, where asylum for Snowden is being encouraged, the Ecuadorian National Assembly made it clear they consider any surveillance by the U.S. a serious crime. Ecuadorian Foreign Minister Ricardo Patino also condemned France and Portugal and demanded an investigation. While Snowden remains a stateless person for now, one asylum option that he can cross off his list is Poland. The Polish Prime Minister today confirmed the whistleblower will not be allowed political asylum there. Serious news coming out of Canada. Police in Canada say they have foiled a plot to bomb the legislature of the province of British Columbia. Police say it was a plot inspired by Al-Qaeda ideology. They say a Canadian man and a woman were both planning to detonate 3 pressure cooker bombs filled with nails and bolts outside the Parliament buildings in the Pacific Coast city of Victoria. Police said there was no evidence to suggest a foreign link to the planned attack, which was set for July 1st, a public holiday in Canada. They said there was no risk to the public because they'd been monitoring the suspects back since February.
At least 22 people were killed in an earthquake in the northern tip of Indonesia's Sumatra Island yesterday. The quake that measured 6.2 in magnitude also left more than 200 people injured. Rescuers fanned out across the area today, searching through rubble for more possible victims. Indonesia's National Disaster Mitigation Agency set up 10 shelters in the region for people whose homes were destroyed. Indonesia suffers from frequent earthquakes. The country is on an area of intense seismic activity where a number of tectonic plates collide.
A Vatican official says Pope John Paul II has cleared the final obstacle before being made a saint. A commission of cardinals and bishops met yesterday to consider the case and signed off on it, leaving only Pope Francis to approve it. Their investigation determined that the beloved Polish-born pope lived a virtuous life, the first step in the sainthood process. Subsequently, the Vatican determined that a French nun who had prayed for his intercession was miraculously cured of Parkinson's disease. A second miracle is needed for canonization, but the Vatican has not divulged any details about that particular miracle. John Paul has been on the fast track for possible sainthood ever since his death back in 2005. And still ahead in our newscast, the jury of Peter Chan's forgery trial goes into deliberation. Carrie Lam says more government funding for West Kowloon project possible, and a former Tiffany executive accused of stealing jewelry. Welcome back. Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam told lawmakers today that additional government funding may be necessary in future for the West Kowloon Cultural Hub project because it is running over budget. The government will look into the possibility of using private funding to build some of the performing venues and exhibition facilities. Some lawmakers are concerned that seeking private funding will result in some companies having too much control over what should be public facilities. Jenny Lam reports.
The Legislative Council approved $21.6 billion for the West Kowloon Cultural District project back in 2008. But rising costs and delays in starting construction works have bumped up the price tag way beyond what was budgeted. Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam, who also chairs the West Kowloon project, did not say by how much the cost overrun is. She said there's been no need for the government to ask for additional funding so far. But the authorities will have to increase sources of revenue for the project, for example, by increasing the plot ratio. They will also make savings through other means, such as scaling back on the design for a park in the area. Another option is to seek private funding for the construction of some of the performance venues and exhibition halls. Skeptics, though, believe extra funding is inevitable.
Will increase in plot ratio by 10 to 15% if the government does not inject more money, then the WKCDA would not have money to build the extra floor areas. So I think it's inevitable that there will be extra injection of funds.
For the first batch of facilities, they will cost around $9 billion, and we have sufficient funds for the second batch of facilities as well. But thereafter, a lot of elements will affect the completion of the facilities. We're afraid with too much participation of the private sector, your hands will be tied. I think you should give the WKCDA more flexibility to build this venue of humanities.
Carrie Lam explained that there is no shortage of interested investors, but the government will make sure the investors will not control the performance and exhibition venues throughout the year. She also promised to make sure there is cost control within the government. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
A late night at the High Court this evening in what's expected to be the conclusion of the forgery trial of the man who tried to stake claims to the late Nina Wang's billions. Peter Chan, previously known as Tony, sat through the 26th day of the hearing, and the jury is now deliberating. A verdict is possible later this evening. Rachel Leung reports.
The man formerly known as Tony Chan is at the High Court to learn his fate at the end of his forgery trial in connection with his attempt to stake claims to the Nina Wang billions. Judge Andrew McRae points out to the jury that Chan did not admit to possession of any forged will or documents in his statements to the police or in any of the evidence. One may lie for many reasons, he points out, and in a sense, they may be innocent. He may have told lies to protect someone or to hide a disgraceful conduct. But the mere fact that the defendant was telling lies is not evidence of guilt, he tells the jury. What the jury needs to do, he said, is to consider the motives. The defendant kept his eyes closed and head down through most of the hearing and nodded occasionally when listening to the translator. Chan faces charges of forging what was said to be a 2006 will of the late tycoon Nina Wang. The self-styled feng shui master claimed Wang invited him to her home one evening and gave him a will which would have left him her multi-billion-dollar estate. The prosecution accused Chan of forging the document using a different document in which Wang gave him $10 million. More than 30 witnesses were called to the stand, including a genetics expert, penmanship expert, and a former legislator who told the court the relationship between Chan and Wang was that between a feng shui consultant and a client, and not the lovers Chan claimed they were. The private life of who was once Hong Kong's richest woman was laid bare in front of the court years after her death. Rachel Leung, TVB News.
The prosecution has dropped all charges against Occupy Central volunteer Melody Chan. However, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Kevin Zervos, rejected accusations of a political witch hunt. Evelina Leung has more.
Occupy Central volunteer Melody Chan arrived at Eastern Magistracy today for the hearing. She was charged with assisting and taking part in an unauthorized assembly following the annual July 1st rally 2 years ago. Today, all charges against her were dropped. The Director of Public Prosecutions said they didn't go ahead with the case because Chan didn't play a significant role in the unlawful gathering. He also denied this case had been a political prosecution and that authorities respect the right to protest, but demonstrations must be carried out lawfully and peacefully. He said that Chan wasn't arrested earlier because the police simply couldn't locate her. Although the charges were dropped, Chan has been bound over to keep peace for 12 months in the sum of $2,000. Outside the magistracy, Chan dismissed the prosecutor's explanation. She said she had made numerous public appearances over the past 2 years and that the police could have easily called to get in touch with her. Evelina Leung, TVB News.
Here's a story about a woman who won't be having breakfast at Tiffany's anymore. It's an alleged case of one Tiffany's vice president turned jewel thief. The fabled New York jewelry store confirmed it had filed a federal criminal complaint against its former vice president of product development. 46-year-old Ingrid Lederhaas Oken was allowed to take jewelry to potential manufacturers to determine the cost of production. Instead of returning the jewelry to the store, she would report the items missing or damaged. She's accused of selling the jewels for $1.3 million to an international buyer, falsely claiming they were her own. If convicted, she faces a maximum sentence of 30 years in prison. All right, Etienne, over to you for a look at today's sports.
Yes, and the Wimbledon women's semi-finals are set, and the final four will not include China's Li Na. Li fell to Poland's Agnieszka Radwanska in 3 sets. Jameson Wang has highlights.
Li dropped the first set in a tiebreak before taking the second 6-4. But in the deciding third set, Radwanska pulled away early and on the 8th match point, put away the former French Open champion.
It was pretty good, really. At least better than the last 2 years. Yeah, and also, I was pulled for another thing, pulled for so many things on the court. Like before, I never thinking I can come to the net as like today, so many times.
I think the bigger pressure is, I think, in the first week. Then you see the player, and I think the quarterfinals is always the minimum. I think for everyone, especially when you see that. And I think now I think I'm just more relaxed, and I think semi-final it's already great results. So I think I'll just go on court and try my best again. I think without that big pressure.
Radwanska will next take on Germany's Sabine Lisicki, who beat Kaya Kanepi and ousted top seed Serena Williams earlier this week. Jameson Wang, TVB News.
And in the other semi-final, Belgian Kirsten Flipkens will play Marion Bartoli of France. Flipkens defeated former champion Petra Kvitova in 3 sets. Bartoli posted a straight sets win over American Sloane Stephens. And in baseball, Homer Bailey threw the second no-hitter of his career as the Cincinnati Reds beat the San Francisco Giants 3-0. Bailey struck out 9 batters. Gregor Blanco grounded to third for the last out. It was the first no-hitter pitched this season. Bailey also recorded the last no-hitter last season. The 27-year-old became the 31st pitcher in Major League history to throw 2 no-hitters.
And that's going to do it for us in the newsroom. Thanks so much for tuning in and have a great evening.
Good night.
Hello everyone. It was fine and very hot today, apart from some isolated showers. At 5 p.m., a ridge of high pressure was bringing generally fine and very hot weather to southern China. Today's temperatures ranged from 27.6 to 33.2 degrees, and the current temperature is 30.1 degrees Celsius. A trace amount of rainfall has been recorded since midnight, and the very hot weather warning is now in force. So Freddie, how's the weather tomorrow?
Oh.
Fine and very hot. Temperatures will range from 28 to 33 degrees. Tomorrow's API is forecast at 10 to 80 and the pollution level will range from low to high. The maximum UV index forecast for tomorrow will be about 12. And now here's the latest global weather update. Cloudy in Shanghai, Taipei and Xiamen. Sunny in Guangzhou, sunny intervals in Macau. Rain in Seoul, cloudy in Tokyo. Rain in Ho Chi Minh City and Manila. Showers in Kuala Lumpur and Jakarta. Cloudy in Karachi, rainy in Mumbai. Sunny in Cairo, showers in Nairobi. Sunny in Sydney, windy in Melbourne. Cloudy in Toronto and New York. Sunny intervals in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Cloudy in London, Paris and Frankfurt. And that's the weather. Have a great evening.